Hey guys, this is Marc Goldberg from Marc Vlogs Watches, and today I'm going to tell you the story about how I sold roughly $10,000 of watches on eBay relatively recently, and without a hitch. No problems, no fraud, everything completely fine. But I kind of have a method to it, and I want to talk to you about this because it's important that you know how to not only buy your watches on eBay, but also how to sell, which is, I think, significantly more dangerous and in the end more complicated. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of how to use the Fleabay, I'd like to give you a quick wristwatch check, and here it is. I am wearing the Rolex 50th anniversary Sea Dweller. I did not get this one on eBay. Unlike several of the watches that I currently own, this one I got at the authorized dealer. But if you'd like to skip the wait list, there are 50th anniversary Sea Dwellers on eBay right now. And in fact, last I checked, one has sold recently for under $12,600. Now that this watch lists at $11,350, but by the time you pay sales tax, well, you're up over 12. So you can skip the wait list without necessarily paying a big premium on this watch. But that is the topic of how to buy on eBay. I don't want to digress. Right now we're going to talk about how to sell on eBay. Literally, before we talk about how to list any kind of a watch, what I think is more important right now is we talk about how to prepare. So the first thing is, if you are new to eBay, or maybe you've registered for eBay, years ago, but you've barely used it, you're not ready to start selling on eBay yet. What I want you to have is minimum 50, better 75, and better yet 100 feedbacks. Okay, feedback is where you've completed a transaction and the buyer and seller have each given the other, a good report card. Now, you get feedback if you're the buyer, you get feedback if you're the seller, doesn't matter. So if you have like 7 in feedback, I don't personally think you're ready to sell an expensive watch like a Rolex on eBay yet, because you haven't proved yourself to be a trustworthy community member at eBay. And however, you can fix that problem, and you can fix it pretty quick. Just start buying stuff that you normally would need, and start buying it on eBay. Now, I'm not talking about buying paper towels, but if there's something that you usually order from Amazon, maybe go on to eBay and check that out and see if you can find it there. You can find K-cups, you can find interesting roasts of coffee and all sorts of things that you commonly use, that you don't have to go way out of your way, but start buying them maybe for a little while on eBay, or at least check eBay for pricing and so forth, and do that before you go to Amazon. The reason is that when you purchase something from eBay, once you've received it, you'll have the opportunity to leave feedback. Now, you're going to be asked to leave feedback on a transaction where you're the buyer. You're going to be asked to leave that feedback by your eBay control panel even before you have received the merchandise, but I wouldn't do that. I wait until I've received the merchandise, and then as quickly and efficiently as I can, I leave positive feedback. Check all the boxes to give your seller 5-star reviews, on absolutely everything. Because no eBay seller is going to give you a good review first. Typically on eBay, the buyer goes first. Okay, so you want to make sure that you leave your feedback first. Now, shortly after, like within a week, your seller should return the favor. They will be notified that they've got some feedback and they should leave feedback on the transaction. If they don't remember to leave you feedback, just use the contact button on the transaction, again, on your eBay control panel, to just politely contact the seller and ask if they would be willing to leave you good feedback, since you have done that for them. I would wait at least a week, because some of these sellers are really busy. Some of them are doing this as a full-time business, and you don't want to piss them off. But ultimately, you can very rapidly work your way into where you have 50, 75, 100 positive feedbacks, okay? Don't be a bad eBay buyer if you intend to be an eBay seller, okay? What do I mean? What's a bad eBay buyer? A bad eBay buyer wins the auction or exercises the buy it now button, and then doesn't pay quickly, or has special requests. such as, hey, I just paid you, but could you ship it to this other address, not my PayPal address? Don't do any of that stuff. Make sure that you're paying by PayPal. That is the eBay preferred method, and why wouldn't it be? They own it. And you have a registered shipping address with PayPal. Do not ask your sellers to deviate from that, or you will stand out as some kind of eBay potential fraudster. So don't be high maintenance. Pay immediately, and then keep an eye on your feedback, and you'll see yours correspondingly growing. Why do you want to do that? Well, it's very important that you not only look like, but that you are a legitimate, high quality, good member of the eBay community. Now, there's a lot of junk on eBay. There are a lot of fraudsters on both sides, buying and selling. There is a lot of that. But you're going to stand out as a member who has good feedback and a bunch of recent transactions. So, don't worry if you're kind of relatively new. Just buy stuff. Buy stuff that you ordinarily would. Build your feedback up. Make sure that you're at between at least 50 to 100 good feedback before you even think about selling. And we're going to talk about selling in just a moment. If you have crappy feedback, well, you're going to have to, it's like credit repair. You're going to have to do something about that. And what can you do? Well, what you can do is let those bad feedbacks age out. Okay. And that takes at least anywhere between 6 months to a year. So I wouldn't panic if you got one bad feedback from some crazy seller where it just absolutely wasn't your fault. Don't worry about that. But man, don't get 2, 3, 4 of them. It'll just destroy your percentages. So be a really good buyer. Pay fast. Don't be troublesome. Don't give special requests. Honor all the terms of the deal. Don't return stuff unless you absolutely have to. If you've had fraud perpetrated upon you, fine. Do what you got to do. So just know what you're buying. Buy carefully. Be a good buyer. Run your feedback up. That is step 1. So now you're ready to list your product. So that would begin with research. And what you want to do is find the exact same thing that has been sold by somebody else on eBay. So just search for your product and then go into filters, click the sold tab, and that will show you everything which has sold within the last year that meets your same exact search criteria, and you can get a good idea of what these watches are selling for. Be sure you look and see if you're comparing apples to apples. So if you're selling a Polar Explorer, the black dial might be a little different. If you're selling a Polar Explorer, no box, no papers, then that might be worth a bit less money on eBay than if it had come with the box and paper. So just do your research and get an idea of what you should be asking for the watch. Now, you need to be a little bit realistic here, guys. So if you bought at some giant premium and you want to sell at a giant premium, well, you might be out of luck. But also too, that is going to depend quite a bit on what it is that you're selling. Now, when I say I sold $10,000 worth of watches recently on eBay, it's absolutely the truth. And what I sold was a bunch of mid-tier watches. Okay, so I sold a bunch of I think $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 watches to just kind of like thin out the herd. I sold Omega, I sold a Ball watch, I sold a couple of Breitlings, and I sold a Marathon watch. Again, completely smooth. So have an idea of what you want to ask. Now, when you go to do your listing, the first thing that you should do is take a bunch of pictures. eBay will allow you a maximum of 12 pictures at no charge, so do 12 pictures. And you want to listen. Normally, when you're trying to sell something, guys, you want to we have the natural human tendency to gloss over some of the ugly details. Like, oh, let's say there's a minor scratch that you barely can see on this watch with the naked eye, but if you hold it up to the light in a certain way, it just shows in the picture. And you might be tempted to think like, oh, I shouldn't use that picture because it doesn't show off my watch to its fullest extent. But the reality is that's exactly the picture you want to use. You want to use pictures that show every single flaw. And if there's any kind of a flaw that's notable, like a bunch of scratchies on the clasp, zoom in on that, show that. Very important that your pictures reflect the condition of your watch extremely accurately. And if you have to make any error, be conservative, err on the side of conservative caution. And what that means is you want to emphasize to a certain extent any flaw or at least fully disclose any flaw, even, no matter how minor it is, in the description of your watch and also in the photographs. Because remember, you're probably selling to a guy just like you and just like me, and we are anal. We don't mind scratches too much if they're ours, but like if there's somebody else's scratch, it's like moving into a new house and it's dirty. Ugh. But then your house is probably dirty, but it's your dirt. And that's okay. So what I'm saying here is it's very important that in the description, if there's a little mark on the bezel, that you talk about that in words in the description and that you show a picture of it. The reason for that, by the way, is that the easiest way for a buyer to bail out of a transaction with you is to simply report you to eBay and say that the item that he received does not meet the description that you provided. And eBay will almost always take the buyer's side on that, which is great when you're the buyer. But when you're the seller, you don't want that to happen. You don't want to get that watch back because you don't know what that guy did to it while he had it. You might not even get it back in the same condition as what you sold it. If you're selling a Daytona, how do you know he didn't open it, take out the movement, and send you back a watch with a completely different movement in it? Like, there's a lot of horror stories out there. So as the seller, you have to be extremely cautious because you are the vulnerable one now. And the way you can reduce your vulnerability is by being deadly accurate in your description and your photos. Now, I am not big on auctions. So what I do when I'm selling, and so this is my method, you can do it your way, but if you're gonna follow the methodology that I'm giving you, you will list a fixed price for the watch, and you will enable buy it now. I want offers, but I don't want offers that are stupid low. Those just annoy me. eBay allows you to say, bring offers to my attention which are above X, and just automatically decline offers which are below X. And so I use that. Now, let me just go back one sec. When determining the listing price of my watch, I'm not going to go super low. I'm going to go, I'm leaving myself some negotiating and some wiggle room. So let's say my bottom line for a watch, bottom line, like this is the lowest I'll take, is $2,500. And what am I going to list that price at? I'm going to list it at $3,500? No. A lot of sellers do that, but I think that those watches, they don't sell very quickly. So if I would settle for $2,500, I might list it, or let's say that's what I want. I might list it for $29.95, something like that. I want to list it a little bit above where a guy's actually going to pay it. Where a knowledgeable collector, I want to list it a little bit above that. I want there to be some negotiation between me and the buyer, because as the seller, here is the single most important thing. If you don't listen to anything else about this video, here is the single most important thing. Choose your buyer wisely. Choose your buyer really wisely. Now, on my auctions, I always say, I do not enable international shipping because there's just too much fraud outside the country. And also we get into theft in international mail. And I feel like if I'm shipping domestically, this is safer. For those of you who don't live in the United States, I'm sorry, I'm not shipping to you. However, you might employ these exact same strategies within your own countries like the UK, Australia, Canada, etc. Although many of you guys are shipping to the US because this is where the market is. But if you're in the US, I don't do international sales. I want to price it a little bit high. And the reason for that is when I start getting offers and I've got to dicker and negotiate around with these guys, I'm looking at the feedbacks of these guys, right? And so if I'm getting offers from guys who don't have very much eBay feedback, I don't feel good about selling to them because I don't know that they're a good upstanding community member. They don't have a track record. I'm looking for somebody who has like 100 in feedback. That will make me very happy. And so there have been instances where I have turned down money on a buy it now offer from a buyer, a would-be buyer, because even when the money was okay, but I didn't like the look of the buyer's track record and feedback record. And I've never been sorry that I did that. And in every one of those instances, later along has come a buyer offering me the same or similar money, but who has the right sort of feedback. So be very, very careful about the buyer that you select. The more feedback they have, the better. You're going to check that buyer's references by reading through their feedback. Okay, so I'm looking for a buyer who pays me quickly. They have 3 days to pay, but as a seller, I'm looking for a guy who's going to pay me within 24 hours. And when I'm a buyer, I'm paying within 24 hours. If I have a buyer who has not paid within 24 hours, I cancel the transaction. There's a process to do that so that you won't be charged the fees. We're going to talk about fees briefly in a minute. But I'm not going to nag that guy to pay me because I already don't like him. So I feel like I'll dodge a bullet. And if he hasn't paid me in 3 days, I'm just going to bail on the transaction. Package up everything really, really nice. The seller, if the buyer is asking you to ship anywhere other than his registered PayPal address, get out of that transaction. Just telling you straight up. If he says, look, that's my home address, but I'm always at work, so can you ship to my work address? No. Either don't do it or bail out of the transaction altogether. And I have done that because that is not always, but there's a high percentage of chance that fraud is being perpetrated upon you. So that is a big, big scam. Never ship anywhere other than the PayPal registered address. Okay, you want to document everything that you can, so save your tracking. Don't ship USPS, no tracking. I mean, you spend some money on the shipping, and when you're making your listing, you can figure out ahead of time what the shipping is going to cost and just bill, that's chargeable to the buyer of your watch. But don't put it low. If you say, hey, I'm going to ship you my $10,000, GMT Rolex, ceramic, and I'll take it easy on you on the shipping. I'll figure out a way to do it for $25. Well, there goes all your insurance. There goes all your tracking, and your risk of fraud goes up exponentially. Once again, I want to stress, it's very important that you are a good buyer so that you can attract good buyers when you are the seller. You want your description to be very, very, very detailed about any flaws or defects. Don't feel worried about that you're not allowed to talk up the good parts about your watch. You should do that too. So for example, if you're a collector and the watch has been largely put away in the safe and is only lightly worn, great, say so. The other collectors will appreciate that and they will understand it. But you may also say things like it has light signs of wear and it shows minor to moderate scratching on the clasp. You want to disclose that stuff and you want to show it because the last thing that you want to do is sort of gild the lily, make it sound better than it's going to look when the guy gets it, because then all he has to do is push one button, the whole transaction is going to get reversed whether you like it or not. Certainly you can mark no returns in your listing. I do that, but the reality is that eBay will let any buyer return your watch if they are able to claim that you have violated the boundaries of good descriptions. Guys, there is so much more to know about this, but I feel like this is a really good start. And I would like you to put your experiences for me in the comments. Let's continue this dialogue in the comments. Have you bought? Have you sold? Particularly have you sold? And what are your tricks for being a good eBay buyer and a good eBay seller? I know this is a long video, but I think there was so much to know. I wanted to get as much of it down as I could. Tell me, what do you think about eBay? And please like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff for me so that we can continue this horological journey that we're taking together. This is Marc Goldberg. Peace out.